Good morning. I have a new book for you guys. The title of my book is Perfectly Norman, and the author and illustrator is Tom Percival. We're going to thank Bloomsbury Children's Books for allowing us to read this book. Now, the author writes the words, the illustrator draws the pictures. Let's get started. Perfectly Norman. Let's remember that when we read a book, we read from left to right, top to bottom. Norman had always been normal, perfectly normal, until one day he grew a pair of wings. Look how beautiful they are. Norman had always imagined growing taller or a beard like his dad, but he had never imagined growing a pair of wings. But they were here. So he decided to test them out right away. He went soaring in the sky. Soon Norman was swooping around and generally having the most fun ever. Until he realized it was time to go in for dinner. You see, Norman had always been so normal, he didn't know how his parents would feel about his extraordinary wings. So when he went inside, he decided to put an old, scruffy coat over his wings. His parents didn't notice the wings, but they did think it was kind of odd to be wearing a coat inside. Bath time was really problematic, and so was bedtime. You see, the coat was thick, hot, and uncomfortable, but Norman decided that no one would see his wings. Ever. The next day, Norman went to the park, but it was far too hot for him to play with any of his favorite games. He's watching his friends, but he looks miserable. So Norman decided to go on. Long journey rides were unbearable, and the swimming pool was dreadful. Not to mention, it was nothing compared to his friend's birthday party. He wasn't even able to get on the bouncy house. Norman actually looked miserable. The only time that Norman could feel normal was when it rained. One day a boy tried to pull his coat off, and Norman had to run away. He was hot-faced and angry, but he was also sad. He wished he had never grown his wings. Then he saw some birds high up in the sky and remembered the joy of his first flight. It occurred to Norman that it was the coat that was making him feel miserable, not his extraordinary wings. His mom and dad asked, "Why don't you take that scruffy old thing off?" And Norman looked at them hesitantly. His parents smiled, and he built up his courage. And he was brave. He felt brave inside that he could do anything. And he decided to throw the coat off. And he let his wonderful wings fan out. See how sad he looked right here and miserable. But then he became brave and courageous. And he decided to throw the coat off, and his wings fanned out. Norman leaped into the air, and finally he was free from that coat. He noticed some other children looking at him, and they were looking around. And then they looked up at Norman again, and one looked at the other, and they paused. So Norman inspired them to be brave, and they were brave enough. And pretty soon, whoosh! The sky was filled with flying people, with flying kids. Norman had never felt so happy in his life. So Norman not only gathered his courage and was brave, he inspired other kids to do the same. It might have been scary, but he was brave enough to do it, and I'm happy he did. He realized that there's no such thing as perfectly normal. But he was perfectly Norman, which was just as it should be. The end. I hope you enjoyed this book. Let's do a journal entry together.